You need to know that I've spent a lot of my life in climates that were warmer climates. And what that means is that there are a lot of sort of summer weather events that will happen, like hurricanes and tornadoes and various things that you need to be aware of that are a result of my living in those climates. And the result of that is that I've become a great deal more, you might say, forgive the pun, acclimatized to those things than a lot of other individuals. One of the things I want to talk about today, or what I want to talk about today, is this idea of you'll surely die. And I'm going to go ahead and discuss that on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Wednesday, the 11th of May of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, the podcast, on BitChute, on YouTube, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. On kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on Minds, MINDS.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there, primarily on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you happen to be catching me today. Subject for today is You'll Surely Die. And I want to go ahead and go through my notes so that you'll have some idea what I'm talking about. And I have a very specific reason for going here, and by the end of my notes, you should know what that specific reason is. Do storm warning sirens fill you with dread? Well, if they do, you and I are not alike. For the most part, those annoying noisemakers just serve to tick me off. When I was pretty young, before my 10th birthday, I'd already been through my first serious storm, Hurricane Camille. I went through a series of other such events, and, none of them, not one of them, came close enough to do serious damage to me, any member of my family, or really even to our property or properties. Even when we ran from them, which we did at least once. Camille was an example. What's even more annoying is the weather man or woman, men or women, man or woman, telling a regional area to go hide in the basement. What's the chance you're going to be seriously affected by what they're putting out dire messages about? I would bet, and I don't know the answer to this, you tell me if I'm wrong, you have less than a 1% chance, probably substantially so, of being even remotely bothered by the events over which those annoying folks are crying doom. Worse yet, when that actually happens, that is, you are affected, you either know it yourself before they tell you, or you never knew it was coming at all. In my mind, these folks are, quote, the boy who cried wolf, end of quote. They want your attention, and they'll try to frighten you to get it. Am I saying people aren't regularly dealt horrible blows by such weather events and other things? Not at all. What I'm getting at is, for the most part, the warnings of the klaxons and the doomsayers should be falling on the deaf ears of folks who have nothing to worry about. In fact, if you look at most weather events in the U.S., you'll see that the number of people directly affected by them is exceptionally small. What was it, Katrina? 1,000 people or whatever? 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people. Let's say it was 5,000 people, which I'm sure it wasn't. How many people lived in New Orleans? Tell me that that's a big number. And I'm obviously, as Drew Berquist said the other day, look, if it's your family or whatever, big or small, you're going to be sad, you're going to be upset or whatever. I bring this up, though, in order to paint a picture. That same portrait can often be painted when discussing supposed medical professionals. By way of example, years ago, I knew a lady who was told she would die if she didn't abort the child she was carrying. She chose to keep that baby. Don't get me wrong, the event or series of them was or were harrowing for her, and for the child, too, I'm sure, in many senses. She did suffer through some difficult months. To be fair, it was even reasonable to say she could have died. But the story ended relatively happily. Both she and the baby not only survived, but went on to thrive. I have a close family member who took that same gamble. Though she also went through some very tough times, and her little girl through even tougher ones, you could argue. Both she and the baby came through, which, all things considered, would be counted nothing short of a miracle. I bring these scenarios up for a reason. I want folks to come to understand just because people say, "You'll surely die," doesn't mean that's what actually will occur. That's not what that means. I'm not trying to say the risk isn't there. But when, for example, that baby is born healthy and you live to see another day as the mama of that baby, whether or not the baby goes up for adoption, the doomsayers were wrong. I imagine that happens far more often than you'd be inclined to believe. I want you to understand something, though. Like it or not, laying your life down for others is a noble thing. I spent 9 years in the Air Force, and where I didn't have to risk my life really at all, it was still a possibility that would happen at any moment. Do you appreciate firefighters? I know I do. They may or may not take that risk every day, but most of them do take it at some point in their time in such pursuits, whether they end up being in it for a career or not. Is it reasonable to avoid such things when the life of an unborn baby hangs in the balance? I'm not inclined to think so. You might have guessed that what I'm actually talking about here is the abortion debate. There are people saying things like, you may be born with a Down baby. You may have ruptured amniotic sac or pouch or whatever you want to call it. There are any number of things that people will say, and they will use those things to try and tell you that you should just get rid of the baby. And I'm telling you that I've seen some extraordinary events, and I believe, quite frankly, that God honors women who do things like this. My family member that I'm talking about went through some very tough times herself. The baby was born very, very prematurely to the point that she was considered a micropreemie. I've talked about her before. Both of them are alive and kicking today, and you could argue in pretty good health. They literally got used in a presidential State of the Union, I think it was, address, in which the president of the time, and I'm not going to go into who, talked about the fact that they were, that they went through what they went through and that we were doing such tremendous things these days where that sort of thing was concerned. What I'm trying to say is really, really simple. You may think that it's a risk for that baby. You may realize, as I said in the subject, a couple of the podcast a couple of days ago, you may realize that your child may be born Down syndrome or autistic or whatever. But let me just tell you something. As a rule, the reward of having that child come into the world greatly outweighs any of the risks, and that's whether they're risks to you or anyone else. I've already talked about the idea that as far as I'm concerned, when people do things like say, well, I was raped, or it was incest, or whatever, as a rule, I still can't pin it on the baby. I just can't blame the baby. And the baby is still a human, whether you like it or not. Okay? Granted, the child was, quote, caused by that inappropriate activity, that improper activity, that bad activity, that horrible activity. Nonetheless, it is not the baby's fault that that was the case. And in case you want to try and argue that you're concerned about them having the traits of the person who raped you or the incestuous one or whatever, my answer to that is too much of the time there have been people that you looked at, who was it, Adolf Hitler had a nephew or something like it who did everything that he could to fight what Mr. Hitler was doing. You can't say that just because someone is in a given bloodline, they're going to end up a particular way. That's not how that works. And this is what I want you to understand. So you can't use that. It causes me pain. Have the baby, give the baby away, if that's what you really must do. Okay? But don't tell me that you need to get rid of the baby because somebody was guilty of incest. The kid's 11 years old. How can they have a baby? Well, C-section comes to mind. carry the baby until you can't anymore, carry hopefully the baby to a near term, and then do a C-section, and that will go away as a problem. And I'm not saying there aren't things that could cause issues, but I'm going to say this again, particularly if you have sex without cause. But even if you're sexually abused by someone, the reality is getting rid of that baby is not an answer. It's not a solution. Overcoming the evil that has happened to you, I would say that is. Okay, need to go ahead and wrap things up. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, Tom Curtin. Today is Wednesday, the 11th of May of 2022, that middle of the week day. Tomorrow then will be Thursday, the 12th of May of 2022, stepping over that middle of the week and going towards that weekend. Welcome to everyone, and thank you for being here for everyone who has been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloutHub, on my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page, on kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on minds.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group primarily there, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you end up seeing or hearing me today. Subject for today has been You'll Surely Die, and tomorrow is a subject that is rather joyous. It's an autism subject for me tomorrow, and it is, I titled it, The Dam Bursts. And I hope that you will come and join me as I celebrate something that was really cool that I experienced recently, and I hope to make this something that will help people who are dealing with particularly moderately or severely autistic individuals. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you, and hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's, that would be Thursday the 12th of May of 2022's Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was created on Wednesday the 11th of May of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching today's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to check out the next one. Remember, on various platforms, primarily Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloutHub, and the audio podcast, you can subscribe to my content. For the audio podcast, you probably want to use Apple, Google, or Spotify. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. In order to find me on those platforms, you can go to the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloutHub. You can also get to my content on Facebook by finding the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. minds.com, where you will find me at the Kurt's Religion and Politics group, and kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com as well. You can look there. I post my daily video on various social media sites, really only about 3, Parler, Gab, and Twitter at present. I am at KP Schubert on each of them, and you can find me under them, and you can find the videos under me. You should be able to find my podcasts on Google and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's also on podcasts.kpschubert.com. That's podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. If you're looking for me on various of the podcast sites, you probably want to search Kurt's Religion and Politics, not the Daily Summation. Keep in mind, you can subscribe to my content on various places that I put it. All constructive feedback is welcome. You can like, dislike, add a rumble, or give whatever feedback is available on any of the platforms that you can do such things. You can also add a comment on what I put there. Unless you're advertising or doing something that I believe will harm others, I'll leave your comments out there even if I don't agree with or understand them. I will try to let you know I've seen them when possible and may reply if I feel it's reasonable, appropriate, and possible, of course. Thanks again for viewing this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back again for tomorrow's as well.